Okay, guys, the name of this message is going to be called Spiderwebs. Spiderwebs. Before I get deep into what this sermon is about, let me just say that it's actually a continuation of a sermon that I did weeks ago. The name of the sermon was called Pit-Tropolis. I took the word pit, P-I-T, and metropolis and put it together to make Pit-Tropolis. And just to give you a quick summary for those who may not have heard it, basically what I was saying in that sermon was this. I said, I know it's for somebody, and I said, here's the thing, whoever this is for. I said, here's the thing, you've got some folks who may pretend to like you, pretend to be cool with you, pretend to be buddy with you, but really they don't mean you well at all. They mean very bad for you. But what they may be doing is they may be trying to present you with something that is obviously bad, but they try to package it in a way that makes it seem good. And I said it's almost like they want you to become a member of Pit-Tropolis. And I was being symbolic. I was saying it's like there's a pit, this big hole in the ground. And it's kind of like they're trying to invite you to come hang out with them in this place called Pit-Tropolis. And I said, we know that being in a pit is not good. And I was talking about Joseph in the Bible. We know his brothers tossed him into a pit before selling him into slavery. But we know that when people want to put you in a pit, from a biblical perspective, it's just not good. It's not a place you want to be. It's like being in a dead end. It's like being in a spot where someone can look down on you and lord over you and have control over you in a way that's just not good. But I was saying it's like you got some folks that it's like they couldn't put you in a pit. They couldn't hold you down. So what has happened is it's like it's all backfired, and it's like they've fallen into a pit. And so what they are trying to do is they are trying to convince you to join them in this pit, as I call it, Pit-Tropolis, because what they've done is they've decorated this pit and made it look all nice, and they wanted to try to make you feel like it's a fun place to be, even though you see it's a pit, and even though obviously it's not a good place to be in. They wanted to present it to you as something good. So they acted like they were having such a good time in this pit and acting like everything's fun and being busy with things to try to show that it's some eventful place to be. Ooh, Pit-Tropolis, the place you want to be. But I kept saying, do not fall for the trap. Do not become a member of Pit-Tropolis. Just don't do it. Don't do it. You see it's a setup. Just don't fall for it. It's that simple. That was mainly my message, was to simply not fall for what you see is obviously a downfall, obviously a trap from an enemy or enemies. Just don't fall for it. It's really that simple. That was basically my message. And like I said, that was some weeks ago. Well, this message picks up from it, and I'm talking to the same person or same people that message was for, and I'm here to give you good news. See, Pit-Tropolis was like a warning. I'm warning you of something, warning you of what the enemy's doing. However, in this sermon, I'm really congratulating you. I'm congratulating you on not falling for the nonsense, and I'm congratulating you on making it this far, but I'm also giving you a congratulations ahead of time for what's about to get ready to happen. Because what's about to get ready to happen is this. The enemy, your enemies, are working on something quickly. They're working on something that's supposed to be the opposite, or a polar opposite, of what they tried to do with you with Pit-Tropolis. And what I mean is this. Pit-Tropolis was a place that was obviously bad, something that was bad, but they wanted you to perceive it as good. What they're trying to do now is they're trying to get this web or this net, That's what I'm going to use symbolically in this message. That in Pit-Tropolis, it was a pit, and this one, it was a web or a net. Okay, what they're trying to do now is they're trying to get you tangled up into this web, because they want you to go and be in a place where you find comfort, a place that you find shelter. And what they want to do is, when you least expect it, try to make this good place bad. So with Pit-Tropolis, they wanted to get you in a bad place that they tried to make you perceive to be good. But now what they're wanting to do is to try to get you in a place that is good and try to make the situation bad. They're wanting to try to overtake you in a good place, not get you in a bad place that they've made to seem good. Get you in a good place and then make that situation bad. They want to go about it from a completely different angle. However, and the reason why I'm congratulating you instead of calling this a warning is because there's nothing for you to be afraid about. Why? Simple. The plan of the enemy is going to backfire. See, it's not about necessarily getting you to do something specific. It's just about perfect timing for them, planning everything right and getting you off guard. But all you have to do is continue to do what you've been doing. Continue to do what's gotten you this far, because it's what's going to help you press forward. Listen, it's not about doing anything special. It's not about jumping up and down 2 times and waving 3 times and spinning around 8 times and doing a backflip once and doing a cartwheel 3 times and then something miraculous happens. You know, it's not having all these special different directions to do to make something happen. All you've got to do is keep on keeping on. That's it. You just got to keep on doing what you're doing and keep on trusting the Lord, and God is going to make a way out of this situation. In fact, it's not just about making a way out of what will seem no way. It's about getting you ready for something big, getting you ready for your breakthrough. In other words, what the enemy is about to try to do to break you down and tear you apart and humiliate you is actually about to be used by God to propel you into what it is that he has for you. It's going to be like a slingshot that just shoots you right over your enemies. It's just going to be like, well, okay, that was interesting, you know, and then you just moved on. Right when the enemy thought that they had you, you just somehow just made leaps and bounds over them, just like it wasn't a big deal. It'll catch them off guard while they're trying to catch you off guard. But let me break this down a little bit more. Let's get into scripture, because I want you to understand better what it is that I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to give you some visuals here with this web or this net. Here in Psalms 91, we're going to read the first 5 verses. It says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night." And I'll just pause there. Let's back up to verses 2 and 3. Those will be the main focuses to help me get this point across. Verse 2, starting at verse 2, it says this: "I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust." David is saying this about God. He is my refuge. Refuge basically means shelter. God is my shelter. God is protecting me. And then he goes on to say that he is his fortress. And here the word fortress means things like a net, a stronghold, or to capture. So what he's basically saying is this: God, he's my shelter. He protects me. But whenever I mess up, whenever I fall, whenever I feel lost, whenever I just slip and fall or make a mistake or whatever, God's there to catch me. He's there to catch or capture me with his net, so to speak. He's got my back. He's not going to let me fall all the way. He's going to catch me. He has a net to catch me with. Now, look at verse 3. I'm going to make my point. Look at verse 3. He says, surely he will deliver thee from the snare of the fowler. Now, snare here means things like a trap, a bird trap, or a spring net. So now we see this net again. But it says he's going to deliver you from the snare of the fowler. The fowler is a trapper or a bait layer. In other words, the enemy that sets the trap to try to capture you, to hurt you. So what he's saying about God is that God wants to help him and shelter him and protect him and catch him with a net when he falls. But he says there's an enemy out there who's setting traps, who's setting, listen, a net, a special kind of net to entangle me in this net to keep me for himself, to grab a hold of me, to take me captive. So we see two nets going on here in these couple of verses. You've got God's net, which really is a safety net, right? The shelter, the refuge, a safety net, pulling you back in from harm, protecting you. But then you have the net of the enemy, which is a snare, a trap set by the fowler. And so basically that's what's going on with you right now. It's like a net or a web. It's like you got to continue to go with God, continue to follow his footsteps, continue to follow his lead, because from every side you've got enemies trying to trap you in their nets. You must be careful. So you may be saying, well, help me understand this a little bit better. When I was thinking about this sermon earlier today, because this, right now I just got home from work not too long ago and getting this thing recorded. But earlier when I was thinking about this message and I was reading verses to get ready for it, something came to mind, and it's this. I remember years ago when I was a kid, I was playing some video game. I'm wanting to say it was Banjo-Kazooie, but I'm not sure. But I know it was a game on the Nintendo 64. And even now, I still think that was like one of the best gaming consoles ever. Like, it was after the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, but it was before the Nintendo GameCube and the Nintendo Wii. So you had the N64, Nintendo 64, and there was this game, and it was like, if I remember all the details correctly, it was like in the game, you were controlling this character, and it was like you were going up this hill, this tall hill or mountain or something. And there was a part where it was like, almost like a stairway that was going upward in a spiral around this mountain, and you were just walking up it, just walking around. And then finally you get to this point where you're walking and you see this opening in this mountain or whatever, and you can walk right in, but you can see that it's just dark, right? So you walk in and it's dark. In fact, the light is just coming in from the outside because it's just so dark. It's just really the light from the outside shining in the doorway that's behind you once you walk in, that's giving you any kind of light. So here you are, you've walked into this dark place, right? And you're at first you're excited when you see this opening because you've been traveling, you've been going up higher and higher, and you're thinking, man, when am I going to get there? So you're excited because you think, oh, I made some progress. So you walk into this place, it's dark, you don't know what's going on, and you walk in and it's just this, like, it's almost like a huge room almost. And you got the floor, which is just kind of the same dirt or whatever that the mountain is made out of, the big hill is made out of. And so you're walking in, and all of a sudden, it was like there was this big opening in the floor of this big room in this mountain or whatever. And so it was just black, but it was covered with what appeared to be like a net. It was like this big white net, covering this up. And so I'm looking and I'm sitting there thinking, because even as a kid, I was the type of person that I would like to try to think things ahead of time and try to like figure out what was going to play out, you know what I mean, before it happened. Like, okay, what's going to happen when I step on this? This has to be here for a reason, like, you know. So I'm sitting there thinking and I'm debating it, like, do I want to step on it? Do I need to try to go around it? Do I need to just leave? Like, what's going on here? So I'm thinking, okay, well, it's looking almost like, you know, like a safety net, like a net that's there for protection, because obviously this floor is opened up in the middle for some reason. Maybe it's there to just cover it up to help people walk on over. You know, maybe it's a good thing, or maybe when I walk on it, I'll be able to, like, maybe it's something bouncy, because, you know, I'm thinking about it from a video game perspective. So I'm thinking maybe it's something bouncy that when I walk on it, I can jump up and down, and the more I jump, it'll make me bounce up higher, and I'll bounce up high and get up on some type of ledge, you know, up in the air, or I'll see something when I get high enough to see it. Or, you know, I'm thinking, well, maybe when I walk on it, something will fall down, you know, and it'll hit the net and it'll bounce me up. You know, I won't have to bounce myself up. Something else will bounce me up. And, you know, so I'm thinking about all these different things. And then I'm thinking, okay, what if instead of when I walk on this, maybe I'm supposed to think it's okay to walk on. Maybe I'm supposed to think it's supposed to be, you know, there to help me to walk on over. But maybe what if it's a setup where when I walk on it and I get comfortable and I walk far enough in it, like in the middle of it, what if it detaches and closes in and closes me in, and then it just falls down and I just fall all the way back down to the bottom of the inside of this mountain that I just spent all this time trying to get to the top of, you know. So I'm thinking this through. So I'm thinking, what, you know, I'm looking around, you know, I'm moving my character around to see what's going on. And so it had this thing, and if you played the Nintendo 64, you know how I did it. It had this thing where, like, you're watching your character that you're moving, but you could press one of those yellow C buttons. It was like the top C button, and when you pressed it, the camera angle would zoom in and would basically be like in the inside of the head of the person you're controlling, and you can basically move its head around so that you can zoom in and kind of like get a better, you know, a better view of things, and maybe you can see some things that you couldn't see prior to doing that. So I zoomed in to look from my character's angles, and I look around, and so I make him look up, and as soon as I look up, in the middle of this pitch blackness, I can't even say ceiling, because if I remember right, it was just black, just even up there, I couldn't see the top of a ceiling or anything. But at the highest point of what I could see, right in the middle of this opening above me, was this huge spider just hanging there. He wasn't moving or nothing. I mean, he was just hanging there, like hanging by, you know, his string that he uses to make a net. And then it hit me. It wasn't like a special net, a safety net. It was a web. It was supposed to look like a safety net to help you walk across this opening, but really it's a web, and really it's a trap. Because the same, obviously that same string that's used to make what looks like a net is a web, and it was made by that spider that's just sitting there, and evidently he's going to wait till I get it right in the middle of this web, and then he's going to come down. I already know that's how it's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to turn around, I'm going to leave. I was like, I think I need to leave. I'm not ready to deal with how this is going to play out just yet. Let me leave, let me go do something else, let me come back to this. I got to mentally prepare myself for what might happen when I go ahead and walk over this net. Like, I was one of those people when I played games. Like, I even remember as a kid, like, if I was playing a game and it was on some part of the game where maybe you had to swim underwater, but you had to swim in waters that were real dark and you couldn't see what was going on. So like some shark or some crazy fish could come up to you out of nowhere, but it was like that on purpose, for the purpose of scaring you. So if I would get to a part like that in the game, I'd be like, okay, like I tell myself, like, okay, I'm just gonna save my progress. I'm gonna call it a night, And then in the morning I'll play because it'll be in the daytime and it'll be less creepy. It'll be less creepy if something jumps out and bites me, like that's just how it was. I don't know. But anyway, but back to my point. That's basically the imagery I want to use to help get this point across. It's almost like when you've done all these things and you made all this progress and you've overcome the enemy, and it seems like that you always find a way to put the enemy under your feet, get the devil under your feet. It just seems like you keep making progress, almost like you're going up a hill or a mountain, and you're going, and it seems like as soon as you can enter into a place, kind of like how I was trying to enter into that hole. You want to enter into a place of rest, of safety. You want to be like, I can relax. I've made progress. Let me chill out. It seems like at a point like that, when you get to a place where everything's good, when you least expect it, that's when it's like your enemies want to surround you. And I want to give you that visual of a spider, because it's almost like you need to imagine a giant spider, but really this spider is really just made up of people. All the legs of the spider just really represent legs of people, different people, but coming together in unity to come against you. In other words, using numbers, and this is something I've talked about numerous times in sermons. Evidently, it's going to help somebody if I have to keep basically repeating it in different ways. It's like people using the numbers game against you. So it's just people, it's a spider, but really it's just symbolic of people coming together, walking towards you, coming against you. And the goal is to get you in their web that is supposed to appear as a safety net or a place of safety, but really it's a trap. Really, they're doing what a spider does. It makes the net or the web, and then something gets in it and they get stuck, and that little critter starts moving around to try to get free, and all he does is tangle himself up more in the net. And when the spider that's looking from a distance sees that you ain't gonna get out of that trap, he you know what the spider does, he gets them legs going and makes its way to the prey and just devours the prey, because the prey is helpless. That's what they would want to do to you. That's what the enemy or enemies want to do to you, to get you in a place kind of like how it is with quicksand. You get in quicksand, you get stuck, but it seems like the more you move to get out of it, the more you keep sinking in. That's how it is with the web. You get stuck, you try to get out, you just get tangled up more. It's almost like you're suddenly in a straitjacket. You're looking crazy trying to get free. That's basically what it's about. To get you in that type of straitjacket position, so to speak. In other words, get you in a position where you look crazy for the purpose of humiliating you. Making you look like you need to be in a straitjacket going to a crazy home. That's the point, to make you look ridiculous once you're tangled in the symbolic web, so to speak. And so again, you may be asking, what do I need to do? Well, simply put, the first thing, like I said, mainly is just doing what you've been doing, because that's why I'm doing a continuation of Pit-Tropolis. I gave you directions, you did it, and continuing to do that is what's going to help you progress. Just continue to do what's gotten you from point A to point B. Continue to do what you've done, because whatever it is that you've been doing, whether it's been, praying more, churching more, praising, worshiping more, whatever you've been doing, to continue to seek God so that you don't fall into these traps, continuing to be obedient, continuing to not play dumb and to not give in to the tactics of the enemy. These are the things that you need to continue to do. So that's number one. The second thing is this, going back to verse 1 and then looking at verse 4, he says this: he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Then in verse 4 it says, he shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shall thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. In other words, other than doing what you've been doing, it's also trusting in the Lord and just being under the shadow of his wings, continuing to be under his protection. In other words, continuing to know that you can't do what it is that you need to do dealing with your enemies by yourself. It's similar to what I said a couple of sermons ago when I did that sermon called Frenemies. People that pretend to be friends but really they're enemies. And I said you've got to trust God and lean on God and know that this is something that you may not be able to deal with on your own. And it's the same here, trusting in God and going to him for your protection, for your shelter, not in the people that you know are pretending to mean well, but they don't. In other words, they may act like they care and say, oh, you can come to me anytime, you can talk to me anytime, you can pour your heart out to me, but you can't pour your heart out to them. You can't confide in them. You can't share secrets with them. You can't trust in them for love and comfort and protection. You seek your protection and your shelter in the Lord and trust in him and in no man, especially not the enemy. So those are the two things. One, do what you've been doing that's helped you overcome what you overcame with the Pit-Tropolis issue. And number two, continue to trust in the Lord and abide under the shadow of his wings. And finally, the third thing, verse 5 says, thou shalt not be afraid for terror by night. Don't be afraid. That's the other thing. When the moment comes of the enemy doing whatever it is that he's about to get ready to try to do to come up against you, simply don't be afraid. Have faith and know that God has got your back. Because the point is to get you in a place where you're helpless and you can't get your way out because you're outnumbered, you're surrounded. But it might not be like how it was in the game where I could turn around and go back out. You might not, listen, the exits might be covered, so to speak. You might not have an easy way out. But that's the point. Because as soon as the enemy really can finally get you in a place where there's no way out for you, all you're doing is, all the enemy's doing is provoking God to move on your behalf. It's just provoking the hand of God to move on your behalf. That's all it's doing. In other words, just brave it out. Tough it out. Have faith. Don't be afraid, because it's at that moment that God does something amazing where he gets the glory. Because you can't say it, the enemy can't say it, no man will be able to say, okay, well, you got out of it by doing this. You can't say I got out of it by doing that. No, everybody will have to accept the reality that God was the one that helped you out of that situation. God's going to set it up to where something will happen. He will cause what the enemy does to backfire. It will propel you. And all anybody will do is be able to admit that it was the Lord's doing. It's set up, God allows it to be set up to where he can do something that will cause him to get the glory. So something that's meant to be a disaster for you and humiliation for you and great, grave trouble for you is only going to help you and glorify God at the same time. And that's God's plan many times throughout the Bible, to help someone who has been faithful to him in a way that causes him to get the glory. In other words, he sets it up for a win-win, as we would say. His faithful people win and he wins. We all just win when it comes to God. It's just a win-win situation. And a lot of times, just like this, just like what's going to happen for you, the enemy will be in a position where the enemy will have to see it. In other words, kind of like when David said, he'll prepare a table before my enemies for me. That's basically what's going to happen. Do something mighty for you right in front of your enemies so that they can't even deny it. They can't even play dumb and say, well, we didn't see that. We don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, you saw it. We all did. And it forever changed everybody's life. That's what it's about. And so now the last place that I want to take you, last verse to look at, is in Isaiah chapter 40. The outcome of it from a symbolic point of view is this verse right here. It says, very last verse of chapter 40, verse 31, it says, but they that wait upon the Lord. Come on, those that trust and wait on him and know that God's got their back, even in rough moments, even in this, what seems like it's going to be a rough moment for you. If you wait upon him and trust upon him, this is what it says. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So from a symbolic point of view, it's almost as if you will be able to sprout wings like an eagle. And the funny thing about it is I just talked about doing what? Being under the shadow of God's wings. So in other words, it's basically, what I'm basically saying to you is, it's kind of like God is being like the mama bird that protects the baby bird. And then there comes that point where the baby bird finally gets to get out there and fly and flap on its own and really, get them wings going because the mom has nurtured it and helped it get to a certain point. That's basically what it's about. God is protecting you, nurturing you under the shadow of his wings. And basically what's getting ready to happen is that you, the baby bird, is getting ready to transform into this big, beautiful, majestic eagle that's got it going on. All that and a bag of chips and some dip, some Rotel dip. I like Rotel. Anyway, anyway, moving on. Back to the point. But that's basically what's happening. It's like you finally get your chance to sprout your wings and soar, so to speak. In other words, or how we would say it in ministry, it's like you're getting ready to get a breakthrough. Something major will happen right before your enemy's eyes. Those that try to get you in the pit. Those that try to get you to join them in the pit. Those that are trying to trap you in a net or a spider web. That's what this is about. This is who will have to witness what God is going to do in your life. They'll see you soar at a time where they think they can all come up against you at once. You'll soar above them, so to speak. It's your time to spread your wings. And here's something else. I don't know if you've made the connection yet, but let me make this connection for you. If you remember when I was explaining to you what snare meant, because he was saying that God will protect you from the snare of the fowler. And I said snare meant trap or a spring net, or listen more specifically, a bird trap. You got it now? You got the connection? See, this trap, it's a very strategic trap that the enemy is trying to set for you. Because I'm talking about wings and birds, and now I'm showing you that this trap is, listen, it can be a trap, but more specifically a bird trap. In other words, they've got something specifically for you because they know who and what you are. They know that you're about to sprout your wings. So it's specifically a bird trap. It's specifically, like I said, a huge net made by a huge spider that's supposed to look like a safety net, but it's really a web that's a trap. And listen, it's supposed to, trap not only little itty bitty little insects and critters like a normal web. Oh no, because remember, this is made by a giant spider that's really a bunch of people. In other words, it's not for itty bitty tiny insects. This is a big web meant to take down a bird, to capture a bird, and to keep the wings from sprouting and getting strong and flapping and soaring. It's a trap made specifically for you. And here's what I want you to get out of it, and it's this. You must know who you are in God, because obviously your enemy knows who you are in the Lord. That's why they knew to make this specific quote-unquote bird trap, because they know that you're about to sprout your wings. The enemy knows who you are, and the enemy knows what God is about to do to you and through you and for you. So listen, the enemies have made a specific trap for you and just for your situation to try to stop what they know God's trying to do in your life. Now, don't get me wrong. We know it's not going to work, but I'm getting this point across to you that you are amazing. You are somebody special. You are majestic and magnificent in God's sight. And this is the proof of it, because like I said, the enemy knows it. Now, that's just it. They're your enemies. They're not going to tell you this. They're not going to give you these for real compliments. They may tell you normal, regular compliments to pacify you, the same type of nice things they tell other folks. But there are compliments they could give you that they're not going to. They're not going to tell you the truth about yourself. They're not going to tell you, well, I know that God's going to do this for you. I had this vision that God's going to do that for you. I had this dream that God was going to do this for you. Listen, just like when Joseph, going back to Joseph in the pit, Joseph tried to tell his family this dream that God had given him of people bowing down to him, his brothers bowing down, and they just weren't having it. They just weren't having these ideas of serving Joseph. They already didn't like the fact that their dad made this special coat of many colors for them, but this really set them over the edge against their brother. It really brought them into some jealousy. So you have enemies that, listen, are full of jealousy against you, although they may not admit it. And so the goal is to belittle you and to make you feel worthless and to make you feel like nothing and to bind up your wings and to make you feel embarrassed and humiliated and to make you feel stupid for being who you are, stupid for trying to believe God has anything for you, stupid for trying to walk into the things of God, because they do know who you are. They do know that God has his hand upon you. They know, and they've missed out on some great opportunities to do things for God themselves, and they missed out on some opportunities to be good to you and help you and serve you, to show appreciation to God, to say, hey, I'm helping out this man or woman of God. They've missed out on some stuff, and they see you continuously staying on track, and it's causing them to be even more the jealous, just like with Joseph's brothers. That's why they wanted you in that pit. That's why they're trying to get you into this web / net / trap. It's all a setup, but it's going to work out in your favor. Just keep doing what you've been doing. Keep trusting in the Lord for his protection and shelter and refuge. And do not be afraid when your enemies try to come up against you. It's only going to be things that listen, it's almost like a ripple effect. It's just a chain reaction. They try to come up against you, God's hand moves on your behalf, and it's just like it backfires on them. Good things continue to happen. The more they try to curse you, the more it just blesses you. It just keeps getting better and better. You keep getting to go higher and higher and higher. So while you're soaring with eagle's wings, you get to look down on them, clucking around like chickens with their heads cut off, mad because no matter how hard they flap, they might float a little bit, but they can't actually fly. And that's what happens to them when they try to be spiders. They tried to be a spider. They just wanted to crawl from here and there and slide up and down the strings of these webs and nets they've created. They didn't even spend time trying to fly themselves. So now they're just going to be just a bunch of chickens looking up at you mad because you're soaring while they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. You go from baby bird to eagle. They go from being a giant spider to disconnecting and being a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off. That's it. and running in different directions to try to get away from what they just saw, trying to get away from the reality of how the embarrassment and shame they've tried to bring upon you has now been brought upon themselves. Continue to believe on the Lord. I'll say this and wrap this up. For weeks now, there's actually been whenever I would come home from work and I would let my dog out and let him run around, like I'd be standing on my porch watching him, and then there's the roof of the house that kind of comes out, and then there's this post, because there's these white posts that I guess kind of like balance out the weight, I guess. And in the corner of the post and part of that roof, there was a spider web that a spider had created, and it was a pretty big size web, very intricately made, just kind of floating there, hanging. And I looked close, and I saw the spider over on the other side of it, and then I looked around and got a better view of him, and he's got them long legs, and he's just chilling on that web. And for weeks, I would always look at the web and be like, I wonder if the spider's gonna be there this time, and then every time he'd be there in about the same spot, he might kind of move his legs, or he might kind of move just a little bit here, a little bit there, or whatever, but he was usually in that same general spot. And it was like you could tell he was just waiting for something to get tangled up in this web so that he could just go after it. And so just for some weeks now, I would just see that spider just up there in that pretty good sized web. And so it was just funny, because tonight when I came home and I'm getting ready to record this sermon, and I knew I was going to mention how it was funny how I was getting ready to do this sermon, and there actually was a spider, in a web, on my house that I've just been looking at for a while, because I thought it'd be kind of a, interesting little coincidence that I could bring up. When I let my dog out tonight, I looked and I noticed that the web was gone. No web, no spider. And I didn't expect it. I totally didn't expect that tonight, knowing that I'm going to record this sermon and tell y'all about seeing this web that's been up there for weeks, didn't expect it to just suddenly, that's a key word right there, suddenly be gone. And then it hit me. A lot of times, God does things when we least expect it. Sometimes your enemies, they cause you so much trouble, so much heartache. They try to embarrass you. They try to make you feel less than. They make you feel like you're in high school again, dealing with bullies. It'll be a mess. But a lot of times, when you least expect it, when you least think about your enemies being removed, that's exactly when God does something to remove your enemies, or remove your enemies from having access to you, to cause you trouble and to cause you friction. When you least expect it, at the snap of a finger, they're gone. Just like I didn't expect the spider in the web to be gone. I want to give whoever needs this piece of advice, and I'll wrap this up. One of the things that I have a bad habit of doing, and I keep, reminding myself not to do it. I have this habit of trying to figure out when God's going to do something, and how he's going to do it, and where he's going to do it. And I know I can't figure it out, because it's all about God's timing and doing things his way. But for some reason, I always just think sometimes, I wonder how God's going to do this. I wonder what day he's going to do it on. And then I'll be thinking, and I'll be like, yeah, I bet it'd be on that day. I bet it'd be, I bet he's going to do it like this. I bet this is going to happen like, And I know, like I said, I know I can't for sure pinpoint anything, but just sometimes, I guess it's just my humanness. I just want sometimes to like try to guess it, and then when if it does happen in a way that I think it's going to, I kind of want to be like, oh, I knew it, you know. I don't know why, but I have to remind myself, you know, just believe, just trust on the Lord. Don't try to figure it out, because it's when you least expect it that what you're waiting on oftentimes happens. So for those of you, whoever needs this word, don't get paranoid. Don't try to spend so much time figuring out how things are about to play out. Just trust in God. I think I've said all I need to say. I'll wrap this up. Heavenly Father, I thank you for another time to minister another word. Lord, I pray that this message prepares people, prepares hearts for breakthroughs, prepares people to be propelled into what it is that you have for them, that people let go of their own personal expectations on things and say, okay, God, your will be done, your perfect timing. God, show me and reveal to me your way. Show me what you want me to do, and I will wait upon you so that I can fly and soar with eagle's wings and not be brought down to destruction from the enemy. Lord God, I thank you. I give you all the praise, glory, and honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.